Hey there, Knicks fans. How you doing? It's your boy, Jon of the Macri, with you for another episode of the Knicks Film School Podcast, coming at you from Camp Silver Lake after I have... Listen, these kids, man, they keep trying to have sex, do drugs, drink. You can't have it. Absolutely cannot have that example for the young children of society. No, I am not Jason Voorhees. I am actually still Jon of the Macri. I'm going to take off this mask now because it is you get really sweaty in these masks. Let me tell you, folks, the things parents do for their kids. But I am going to introduce a couple of very, very special guests on this very special Halloween episode of the Knicks Film School Podcast. First, joining us all the way from... Is he from England? Is he from Wales? Is he from, I don't know, somewhere on the other side of the pond? Very talented musician, very, very handsome man, a wonderful hair color, Ed Sheeran. Hello, Ed. How are you?
I'm good. As you can see, I have my tattoos. They're in full effect. But yes, he's from England. I believe he's from, I want to say Sussex. So that's, lower. It's below London.
Is that like Suffolk County?
Not quite. No, definitely
doesn't have a lot of similarities.
No, it could be a little bit more posh. So,
Suffolk County is not posh.
Yes.
No. Okay. So, Ed Sheeran, thank you for coming on the program. And last but not least, our other special guest joining us from Tarrytown, White Plains. I don't know what
Ice. OB.
He gets good mad at OB too.
Oh shit!
Tom Thibodeau, Coach Tibbs, Mr. Tibbs.
I just hope you're ready for 6 hours of podcasting. We're going to be going as many quarters as you need to get the game correct. I'm just a laid back dude.
I feel like he's already smiled more this year than he did in the entirety of last season.
Wouldn't you?
As we're going to get into, yes. I would be smiling now, even if there are some things to not smile about, but not to spoil the rest of our episode. We're going to get into all that in a bit. So if you're not watching on YouTube, I bought so this is the commitment again that I made to this bit. $5 mask from CVS, folks. Went a long way. And Jeremy is, of course, where'd you get those sleeves? Those look pretty convincing.
Thank you. Yeah, they're from Amazon, actually.
Oh, that's great.
They came in a pack of 6. These were the most Ed Sheeran tattoo-like. That's
great. And
I woke party I went to,
and I woke up like this.
Of course you did, Tom. So we have a very fun and exciting and happy episode today. Because, hey, the Knicks are in first place. The Knicks are in 5-1, are 5-1. And there's a lot of good things to talk about. There's some quibbles that we will have with the last week. We're going to go through it all. And to do so, I'm very happy to announce we're going to have 2 new segments on the show. So we always close with our predictions. We're adding 2 more things. We are going to be giving out a game ball to some lucky recipient. Hint, hint. He's barely old enough to drink. And we will also be giving out, unfortunately, you can't give out a game ball without giving out a detention. So starting this week, Jeremy and I, every week, will be giving a detention to someone who deserves to be made to sit and think about their actions. Is that a fair description, Andrew?
That is fair. You'll be over there with Kevin at the end of the bench.
That's not where you want to be. So, yes, game ball and detention coming up in a bit. But first, of course, we will talk about the week that was in Knicks land. I think amongst people who do things like record podcasts and write words about the Knicks and have tweets and tweet, one space I feel like I have occupied over the last year and a half or whatever it's been is like, let's be thankful for what we have, because I remember when we didn't have anything except poo on big plate, a lot of poo, a lot of stinky poo. And it was not much fun during the majority of the last 20 years. And like, lo and behold, here we are, and this team we'll get into whatever quibbles we have with this or that, and also some very good things which we're going to talk about. But we could all, I think we're in agreement at this point. This is a good basketball team. Is it a great basketball team? Is it a very good basketball team? Is it this or that? Well, we'll get into that, but like, it's a good basketball team. And yet, even being able to sit here and say that, there is a part of me that is, there's like an itch. There's like an itch that like, I feel like I should feel better about the way things are going. And I don't know if that explains anything at all, but I just wanted to put that out there. That's all.
It's fair. I mean, listen, it's the beginning of the season, right? So I think if we had asked ourselves after 6 games where we see the Knicks, probably wouldn't have seen as much of a drop off defensively, even though it's kind of on pace with where they were last year when the season ended. But there's some bad habits. It's not great sometimes, but just thinking out loud, I don't care. Because those are, again, the record is 5.
I knew that one.
So matters to me. So we talked. I know. But that's the thing, right? You look at the teams that the Knicks played. Who did it start with?
Philadelphia. We're going from after the Magic debacle,
right?
Yes. So that would be the Philadelphia 76ers. Yes.
Right. And did a masterful job defending Joel Embiid. Let Toby get his points. That's fine. The fact that the Knicks have also had double-digit leads in every single one of those games, but more on that in a second. The Bulls game, obviously, to me, it felt like fourth quarter was more of a death by 1,000 paper cuts than it was this sort of offensive implosion. And of course, you have the Pelicans game, which, again, like should have been better. Absolutely should have been better. Let the Pelicans back in. And so it's kind of funny how the idea went from the Knicks don't have a closer, and I know you tweeted this and it was spot on, to no, it's the Knicks can't make stops in the fourth quarter. And when when you're the worst team defensively in the fourth quarter, then you're going to struggle. No, just there's no excuse to it. And until you clean that up, it's going to be a problem.
Yeah, it's funny, of all the things that I'm worried about, as far as bad as the fourth quarter defense has been, that's actually not. That's not number one on the list. I feel like I don't think they're like dogging it in the fourth quarter, with one possible exception that we will get into a little bit later in the program. But it's that to me is it's early in the season. Teams don't have as long in training camp, not as long with preseason anymore. If we look back at last season, they started off. They gave up, 122 points in the first game to the Indiana Pacers. Second game, I think their defense wasn't much better against the Sixers. So, it even a Tom Thibodeau team, it could take a little bit of time. I guess the reason my unnervedness, not a word, but we're going to go with it, comes from 2 places. One, again, as we will get into in a bit, the game that, I hate that I have to start off with this. The game that Julius Randle had against the Pelicans was slightly unnerving, to the point that like it's, going back and like watching some of the clips of like how he, like, clearly it was not his night. And, but I think it got to him. And by and large, I thought he came into that game having a very good season. As you may know, I was a big defender of his after the Chicago game. I did not think he played nearly as bad as some made it out to be. But I didn't love his response in New Orleans, and he's the leader of the team, and whatever they're going to do, whatever they're going to accomplish that season, I think he does need to be, goes without saying, a huge part of it. And that's probably the biggest thing. And then the fourth quarter lead stuff is just, I don't know. It's weird, and I don't know how to explain it. And I don't know that it says anything other than they haven't been able to close people out, and maybe they'll get it figured out in the next couple of days. I hope they will. I think there's a good chance they will. But those are the 2 things that are like kind of gnawing at me. But again, talk about being spoiled. Like that's what we're complaining about right now. And we have, as we will get into also soon, a lot to be really happy about.
Yeah. I think the other thing is we as Knicks fans, Tibbs, right? He's kind of this perfectionist mindset. We talked about it before in terms of analyzing it, But it just feels like whenever a player has 2 bad games, it's like, okay, sicking on him. For me, like with Julius, I was curious about this, right? Because usually when Julius is not scoring, so too is the offense. Yeah. When Julius scores less than 20 points a game this season, the Knicks are 3-0. When Julius scored less than 20 points a game last season, do you want to know what the record was?
Let me wager a guess. Can I at least know how many? I'm going to guess he did it. He scored under 20 about 15 times.
21 times in the regular season.
21 times he scored under 20 in the regular season. All right. So their record was 5-16,
8-13.
Okay. So I was a little, okay. Yeah, that's not too good.
And they were 1-2 in the playoffs. But again, that to me just goes to say that even when he's not on top of his game, there's better talent around him to elevate it. So it's not just a situation with Julius. So yes, is he supposed to pick the team up? Of course, but that's the beauty of this Knicks team, right? That's why we talk about, okay, you have Julius, you have RJ, you have Fournier, you have Kemba Walker, you have Derrick Rose. Like you have guys who can pick your team up. Not everyone's necessarily going to play their best game the same night. And I don't know, it feels like there's becoming this habit. And again, I'm not saying Elfrid was a crutch. Like he was just legitimately bad. And that's why we talked about him as much as we did last season.
Yes.
But now it's a sort of thing where it feels like there's almost a grasping at, okay, which player did not perform well, as opposed to the mindset of like, hey, the team is still functioning at a high level.
100%.
Did they almost choke away games? Yes. But like for Chicago, 45 minutes, almost 45 minutes of that game.
The Knicks, 45 minutes of the best basketball they've played all year. And then it was just 3 bad minutes.
And listen, I've talked about Chicago and that they're overrated. They're still a good team, even without Patrick Williams.
They just gave Utah their first loss in a game that Utah was they didn't have Mike Conley, but otherwise, we're healthy. So,
right. So if that's what we're kind of going off, like you're beating good teams and you basically have one blemish on your record thus far. That's okay by me.
And the blemish doesn't even bother me in retrospect because it was like they came out. They didn't really respect the opponent. The opponent had a couple of guys who came out and had unbelievable, segments of the game and whatever. The Knicks were cold shooting. And I just want to be very clear about something because I don't want people to. Actually, people call me a hypocrite. I probably am, but I don't want people to call me a hypocrite in this one sense. I don't mind in the least that Randle is struggling shooting the ball. That's not what I care about at all. And I think we're getting ahead of ourselves with one of our segments later, but I do want to make very clear what I'm concerned about with Randle after the Pelicans game was some of the clips where you saw him visibly frustrated, where he didn't get the ball. There's one in particular I'm thinking of. And then just like the defense, which has been, by the way, outstanding over the course of the year. We saw the first signs of the stuff that we saw occasionally in the first year when Randle was here, which is that I think he would let his frustrations on one end get. Now, am I making absolutely way too much of these couple of segments of this one game? Absolutely. And that speaks to the exact phenomenon that you're talking about, because we need to have something to be worried about, right? So this is the thing to be worried about. Mm-hmm. I guess the reason I'm letting it seep in a little bit is because the thing that I am happiest about, happier than the 5-1 record, happier than what is now the number 2 offense in the league, happier about first place in the East, happier than all those things, is the Knicks seem over the course of the first 2 weeks of the season to have become the shining example of culture now in the NBA. It is gumdrops and candy canes and lollipops and rainbows. And it's just, every champagne waterfalls, the whole thing. Beautiful stuff. And I don't want that to be threatened in the slightest. And Julius is the heart of the team. And I guess this is the long-winded way of saying I want Julius to be happy. I don't care if he's struggling. I just want him to be like a happy camper. And maybe that's a little silly of me that that's the thing that I'm worried about. But if I'm just being honest, like, that's why I am on here, and I'm there's a little part of me that's like, the fourth quarter stuff I think they'll be fine. That I'm not really worried about long term.
I hear you with Julius. Look, I mean, his body language at times was not ideal during that Pelicans game, especially. Like there would be times where might turn the ball over. And instead of getting back on D, he pauses for a moment and then collects himself and goes. Look, I don't know if it's just one thing. Some have said, oh, well, he's a recent, he has a newborn and maybe he's not sleeping. Listen, whatever it is, it doesn't matter.
I saw that.
But I think, but you're saying, in terms of Julius being happy, I'm sure that if you asked him, the first thing he would say is, we're winning. And
yes, he would.
That's really what he cares about.
Yeah.
And other players are performing. And that's the thing, like with the Chicago game, we can talk about how he didn't play well, but I would rather just talk about the fact that Lonzo Ball and Alex Caruso did a great job defending him when they had to.
100%. They did.
So it's like, you don't necessarily have to throw dirt on someone. You can also praise why they were not able to succeed. But even still, Randle was able to contribute. Like there are sometimes IQ plays that don't make the most sense, and yet he still found a way to facilitate beautifully. So even though he was taken out of the game as maybe a first option, he still was passing and making the right plays to put the team in a position of success. It was just,
and a few people have pointed that out
as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
no, that's dead on. That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Can't argue with it. I can't be upset by it.
No, I guess I shouldn't be either. And yeah, 5-1 is 5-1. And the Sixers are a good team. As you said, the Bulls are a good team. The Pelicans are not a good team. But again, similar to the Magic game in that it was a weird game, and maybe this team is one of their problems they're going to have to deal with this year, which I don't really think they had to deal with last year, is playing down to their opponents. Which again, if that's the worst thing that you have to deal with as an NBA team, you know what? Things are probably pretty good, because that means by definition you are good. And here's the best thing I could say about them as a team before we get to someone that we are going to sing a lot of praises for. I had a lot of people coming into the season who we may or may not have chided that picked the Knicks to have a drop off, despite the fact that they had an increase in talent. I think the general consensus was like, yeah, well, they can't do that again because so much had to break right. And I think what those people were referring to was like the Knicks finding a way to win games that, like, more games than the normal team finds a way to win in terms of like typical situations. And here we are. Has it been pretty? Not always. Has it been perfect? Absolutely not. But they have found a way to win these games that other teams would have perhaps found a way to lose. And that the Knicks, God knows, in years past would have found a way to lose. And they probably would have found a way to lose all of the games. And these Knicks have found a way to win all of the games. And last thing I want to say is just, my fault for doing it. Kind of just glossing over the fact that they do have the second ranked offense in basketball. I mean, my Lord, I know it's 6 games. I get it. It's 6 games, not a big sample size, but coming off of being the 24th ranked offense, that is, I mean, I don't know. That's miraculous. Like good job. Kudos to them. Good job by them.
Yeah. And, we'll see, as you're saying, it's 6 games worth of a sample size, but they're still 7th in net rating. So even if that defense feels negative, you are also now ahead of where you were last season when you ended it, because the Knicks finished with the 9th best net rating. So if you then think, okay, well, they'll clean up the defense. And this is, again, another reason why I have zero qualms with the fact that Tibbs played starters heavily in those first 4 preseason games, because it feels like they are now slightly ahead of the curve compared to where they were. Because right now, we're talking about how a few things broke the right way and the Knicks won and all this. Like, great. What happens if the Knicks don't do that? And there's less time that they have to develop chemistry. Mm-hmm. If they lose that Celtics game, what does that say? The Pelicans game, it felt like a roller coaster, and yet the Pelicans never had the lead at any single point in the game. So it's
that's true.
That's the thing. Like, they're winning, and that's why it seems like a ridiculous thing for me to keep going back to it. But
no, it's not ridiculous, because it's the thing that matters most.
Right. And listen, Tibbs knows that there are things that need to get patched up, right? Yeah. It's just a matter of how they're going to do that. But
I think this opening of the season has been Tibbs' wet dream, because what he likes to say is you win or you learn. I think he gets to have his cake and eat it too, because he gets to go back into the locker room and the film sessions with these games and being like, you guys may have won that. You didn't deserve to win it, not with how you played, and point to some very specific things. Because I mean, the reason they've won a lot of these games is just that their shooting has been so goddamn good, and the shots are going down. And that's, I guess, it's funny enough that among the things I'm not really worried about. I'm not worried about there being a shooting drop off. Not with these guys. Not with. I mean, is Kemba Walker going to hit 58% of his threes all year? Probably not. But I think he's going to hit a lot of them. I think Fournier is going to keep hitting shots, and well, might as well transition to giving out our game ball a week. I think there is a young man who may have. I think he had a decent game in New Orleans. I don't know. I that's what the Twitter sphere seems to be telling me. I think he's going to shoot it pretty well, also, and that is, of course, RJ Barrett. I need a moment to compose myself before I speak about that game. So I'm going to actually turn it over to you. I shouldn't do that. Who is your game ball going to this week? Because maybe you're not going to give it to RJ Barrett. Maybe you're going to get it to someone else.
I mean, it's going to RJ. How could it not? Really?
Kemba's making a lot of threes, man. 58% is no joke.
That's a great story. A lot of these players, they're playing like the A team, but you can't stop the rain. And here we have RJ Barrett, or, some people call him Star RJ Barrett. I think also RJ Barrett could potentially work. There's something going on there.
No, if
it's not the best.
Quite comes off the.
That's why you speak it. You don't actually tweet it. No, it has to be RJ. Think about it. Like, what player would you trust right now, defensively and offense, just in this 1 week span, to showcasing what he did? I mean, I think one of my favorite things was the fact that he was saying with the DeMar shot, how he had watched him in Toronto and he knew it. And when you rewatch that play, just how he switches, and Fred Katz did a great job illustrating this in The Athletic, but how he switches off of Levine and then doesn't bite on the pump fake. And then Mitch also, when he's guarding Vooch in the corner, kind of shades over a little bit, puts his arm up, and he's with him the whole way. And Zach Levine's arms are stretched out like it's in, it's over. Nick Young, Swaggy P, ball's going in. It doesn't. It's an air ball. Lonzo Ball flops to the floor to try to draw something. Knicks win. And then the next night, career high in points, was efficient, was effective. The fact that, again, 6 games, we all know the small sample sizes, but something to watch is just how incredible he is around the rim. Because if you can finish like that, and especially if you're finishing with your right hand, if you're crafty, he just needs to get the calls as well, and his points per game will skyrocket a little bit more. I guess that's kind of an oxymoron, but they'll increase. Or redundant. What would you say? If it skyrockets a little bit, it doesn't really make any sense. Regardless,
let's just go with it.
Yeah. I mean, that's the sort of thing where it's why with all of these younger players, putting ceilings on them, it doesn't have to be unrealistic, but it can be hard to do, because right now, if you're seeing this from RJ Barrett at 21 years old and you see the names that are up there with him, right? Like, there are criteria that have guys like LeBron and Luka and all these other players who are significant stars. And it doesn't mean that RJ is going to get there. But when you think of someone who can play that level of defense, who can take over offensively when the Knicks absolutely need it, who can take these pull-up step-back threes, who's finishing, like that level of two-way talent at 21 years old, and that motivation, the sky is the limit. And so that's the thing when I see things like with Tyler Hero and other players, it's ridiculous to me, because, well, you got RJ who's starting and doing all this. And as we talked about last week, right? Tyler Hero, 30 points, 28 shots in that one game. Like, that's just a high usage player. And that's not going to be RJ every night, what he did in New Orleans. But that is the proof that shows, like, it's games like these for a 21-year-old and what he can accomplish. And if that's not the type of breakout performance that you want to see, I really don't know what else he could have done.
So I've very well said. I've spoken about this a little bit in the past. The reason I fully believe this, that RJ does not get grouped in with all these other guys, all these other young players in the league, is because, like a Tyler Hero, every young player has bad games and struggles, has stretches where they don't look good. But most of the young players in the league over the course of their early careers, when they have their good moments, the good moments are flashy. The good moments look the part of a guy who's going to be, the Sports Center highlights and the whole thing. RJ's good moments have, for me personally, and not everybody will agree with this, but this is how I feel, have been more workmanlike. They have been more lunch pail moments. They have been more, by brute force. And last year they included a lot of spot up threes, which is great, but like it doesn't get the attention that your off the dribble stuff gets. And listen, with good reason, because if you can create off the dribble behind the 3-point line, that is a very certain skill. What was great about this game is we saw some off the dribble threes. And in terms of playmaking, which is to me the greatest untapped potential part of RJ's game, every one of his 6 assists were like he earned. Like some assists are like cheap assists. No. Every one of them, it was 5 really, really nice passes to centers. I think it was 3 to Mitch, 2 to Taj, and then a kick out to Kemba on the 3-point line in the corner. All of them were like spoke to me of a playmaking wing that there just aren't a lot of those guys. That's number one. Number two, you mentioned the finishing. So his first 2 years, he finished at the rim 54% as a rookie and 55% last year. Those were both in the bottom quarter of the league. Again, it's early. 74% around the rim, which is in the 73rd percentile for wings in the league. And then if we just want to expand a little bit more, points per shot attempt, you want to talk about trajectory, rookie year, 95.9 points per 100 shot attempts. That is in the 12th percentile. Last year, 106.7 in the 39th percentile. This year, 119.8, 75th percentile. It's coming. It's coming, and I think we're starting to see it. I guess, what do we expect from, like, he's not going to go out and do that every game. But especially since, by the way, his usage rate is the lowest of his career. His usage rate this year is 20. It's been over 23 the last 2 years. So I wonder, like, I'm sure he's going to still have games where he scores in single digits and like he focuses more on the defensive end. Somebody else has it going, this, that, and the other thing. And that's okay. To me, this was just a huge step. And he made all the plays and did all the things that we've been wanting to see from him over the last couple of years. And he did them all in one game. So,
and he doesn't have to do it every game. That's the other beauty of it. It's just like
not on this team.
There are players who can pick you up. And again, it's like you have to count on 4 guys in the starting lineup offensively to have some of their worst games for you to be really out of it. And I mean, we're not talking about superstar stuff especially from Walker or Fournier, but as you're saying, the 3-point percentage that he has, and considering the shot diet that the Knicks have, how many threes they are taking and how many they're making. Again, like that's just RJ can step up, like, all right, I'm needed, I delivered. Same thing with other guys. And I think the other thing too is, again, if you talk about the beginning of the season and trying not to take too much into consideration with things, like Emmanuel quickly, he's been struggling. But just kind of to go back very quickly, with no pun intended, with what we were talking about earlier, because it kind of came up as I was just thinking aloud about it. Like, what are these late game? I don't want to call them collapses, because
collapse implies a loss. Yeah.
Right. Skirmishes wouldn't be right either. Just
kerfuffles, mishaps.
Sure. Yes. We'll do mishaps. Like, if you get more offense from him, from Alec Burks, anything, then it kind of sets everything up. But regardless, that's not happening. But back to RJ, when other players aren't contributing, again, that's what RJ was able to do. And who knows, maybe against the Raptors, RJ doesn't have his best game, but then maybe Julius Randle does. Maybe Evan Fournier does. That's what's fun about it.
That is what's fun about it. And it's occurring to me, like, it's interesting. This team has, maybe we won't throw RJ into this category, although I think after the last game, we kind of have to. I was going to say 4 or 5, if you want to count RJ, it's 5 players who in the last, like, at some point in the last couple of years have been the best player on their team. Kemba Walker was the best player on his team, or I guess the last 3 years. Kemba Walker was the best player on his team in Charlotte. Derrick Rose, I think, was the best player on the Knicks in the playoffs last year, and like has had experience. Certainly he was the best player on his team in Detroit. I don't care that he didn't start. Julius Randle, best player on the Knicks last year. RJ, and then Fournier. And you want to give me Vucevic? Well, I don't know. Fournier was the perimeter creator. He was the guy when they needed a shot late. I feel like they'd go to a lot. To have all that on one team, if guys aren't being selfish, and I don't think there's a lot of selfishness so far, that's a nice luxury to have. And I feel like that's going to be a good thing. And maybe, yes, it does create a bit of a steeper learning curve. And maybe that's some of the issues that we've been seeing, but by and large, I think it is going to be an absolute boon for their ceiling as the year goes on and as they figure out more and more how to play with each other.
Yeah. I think also the pull-up ability and the creation that we've seen from really four guys in starting lineup. And,
yep,
you could talk about the second unit too. Like, as I was watching the Bulls game, I was thinking about how Lonzo's defense has been fantastic. He's great on the catch and shoot three. His pull-up game is terrible. And it's kind of like when it really matters later in the season, getting towards the playoffs, like, you're going to be frozen out a little bit and you need to be able to make plays and you need to be able to pull up and things are going to get tighter. And what are you going to do if you're in like Lonzo Ball's position and now all of a sudden, okay, you're relying on Zach LaVine and we know DeMar DeRozan, not exactly a consistent playoff performer. I'm not saying this to flame the Bulls so much as kind of comparing it to what the Knicks have been doing.
You're flaming the Bulls.
Sure. If that's the shot that, collateral damage, I guess, then that's fine, whatever. The shrapnel coming out. But for the Knicks, the ability to then kind of say, well, we can create here. We're not able to do this. Okay, we can shift in another direction. And I think that was the other thing that was, to me, just very important about that one game. It's one game, but the DNA of how this team is constructed in terms of players who can contribute. And
yeah.
With everything going on with Chicago, it's, yeah.
It really, it does make you think. And I don't think that, look, I'm not going to sit here and say I think they're going to be like a 1 or a 2 seed, because I don't believe that. Not in my heart, I do not believe that is going to be the case. At the same time, I'm just actively wondering, like, where is the game that this team can't win? Like, who is that game against? Where is the team that is so good that the Knicks just really like can't hang with them? If both teams play up to, some modicum of normal expectations. And I guess that's what I'm having trouble with, because again, I know whatever they're 15th or 16th in defense. I still believe that this team has it in them to be not a good defensive team, to be a great defensive team. And one guy, interestingly enough, I don't know that we've even mentioned his name once, is Mitchell Robinson. I know he did not have his best outing in New Orleans against Jonas Valanciunas. Jonas Valanciunas makes a lot of guys not have their best outing. So I'm not trying to pile on Mitch for that. He has been nothing short of outstanding this season. And if this is what Mitch is going to be on defense, and this is what RJ is going to be on defense, which I think we feel pretty good about, and like everybody else is just locked in. I think I've been impressed by Fournier's defense for the most part. I think Kemba's kind of picked it up a little bit. Julius, like I referenced earlier, he's played his ass off for most of the season. I think the defense could be there. And then on offense, like if you can shoot it like this, I guess what's the missing piece is like that one guard who could kind of get to the rim at will, like your Donovan Mitchells and your Jamal Murrays and your Steph. Well, Steph shoots it more than gets to the rim at this point in his career, but and then you remember they got a former MVP on the bench who's pretty good, and they could break that glass in case of emergency when they need to. I don't know, man. It's easy to have notions about the things that the team could do. And maybe that's famous last words, and they go out and they blow games to Toronto and Indiana this week and whatever. But I just, the ceiling is there. I think that much, again, of all the things that we're excited about over these first couple of weeks, I think that has to be near the top of the list.
There are a lot of what ifs. I totally agree. But that's the thing. they don't feel like crazy what ifs to me, right? Because the thing with Kemba, it's pretty much health.
Yeah.
If that's the biggest thing here, and he's saying, I feel great and I figure out a way to kind of get past that and rest, and I feel like I can do whatever, manage that accordingly. He's, knock on wood, seemed fine so far. If again, the problem is Julius in the playoffs, well, he's another year older, another year wiser. I'm sure he looked at what he was doing wrong, figured out how he can improve.
Yep.
The Knicks bench was depleted. If you can still have a positive bench with that second unit, then things are moving. So I'm with you. It's kind of like, you don't want to drink the Kool-Aid so much because there are other good teams, but why can't the Knicks hang around with any of these teams? Like, even if Milwaukee is as good as they are, even if they have this championship hangover.
And they've been hurt, we should say.
What is the issue here? They have, yes.
Yeah.
Look, if we're talking about a playoff series, then that's a long ways away from now. We've got plenty of time. But in a regular season matchup, well, why can't it? Especially, here's the other thing. If we're talking about the Knicks and how they play down to inferior opponents, if they see the best teams in the league as
not a problem in the playoffs,
we're on equal footing, right? They're not going to play down to them. So, so that's something you have to consider when they do play Milwaukee coming up, or any of these other teams that are legitimately good.
Yeah, it's a great point. Okay, we don't have to spend too long on this next section. So this is our detention section. Somebody that we think needs to be locked. Andrew, do they have to be locked in a room by themselves for that? Seems harsh and potentially.
What kind of detentions do you give out, John?
The room isn't locked. It's like you can get.
It's not going to be solitary confinement, is it?
Yeah, it's you could go pee.
No, the magic is in the work. You got to stay in there for all 4 quarters.
That was good. That was good. I get you. We're like people who write about the NBA and in some cases podcasts about the NBA it's a business. You want people to read your shit, and the more people tweet about your shit, whether they tweet about it because they love it or they think it's the worst piece of shit in the world, it gets other people to read it. But like the stuff that was said and not said about RJ Barrett in the offseason was just like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? These are the people. Actually, you know what? I stand corrected. These are the people that do need to be locked in the room. Close all the shades. You could give him an empty soda can. So if you want to pee or defecate, that's your outlet, and you have to deal with that. Could we do it for 24 hours?
I think we could do it for 24 hours. I think it could also be longer, because honestly, the fact that they will have to live with people quote tweeting their tweets and saying update for infinity is punishment enough. So lock him in that room for 24 hours and then see how they get back into society. They want to go back in Squid Game style.
You should have to get past RJ Barrett in order to get out of said room.
Good luck with that.
Yeah.
But you know what it is? It's just like what bothers me about it is like people who cover the league are really smart. Like I don't believe you could get to the point where like a lot of people read you or listen to or whatever. And like, it didn't take a lot of effort to, because I get why I like the argument to do it is his effective field goal percentage was below 50 last year. So like a lot of volume. That's why if you want to say that's why he ended up with the counting stats. Like if that is the argument, and it's not a strong argument, but if that's the argument you wanted to rest on, you need to go the extra step and show that if you take away the first, I always forget if it was 10 or 11, whatever that first segment of the season was, where after the Indiana game, he went cold for basically 3 weeks. If you just take that away and you look at his shooting numbers for the rest of the season, you'd be like, oh, he's on pace to like take another leap in year 3. Like it doesn't take a lot to do that. All right. I'm not doing that because I root for this team. I'm doing that because it's like, you could look at a game log and see like, oh, these don't really belong with everything that comes after it. And the fact that people didn't do that, and then pay attention to like the improvements that can't be quantified in numbers, like the defense. And then, second best player on a 4 seed. Like, come on. Like it was frustrating in the moment, but I hope all those folks get their comeuppance in detention. So that's what I'm going to give my detention to.
So, John, here's my detention.
Yes.
I'm with you. I think if we're going to go in the vein of people who are criticizing others, I'm going to look at Twitter is a weird vacuum, right? It always feels like
someone should vacuum up Twitter.
Exactly. Right. Like I had tweeted about David Griffin passing on RJ Barrett, which is just a factual statement. And then people
one of your 5 best tweets ever, by the way.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Fantastic tweet.
I appreciate that. But people responding being like, so does this mean you wouldn't have taken Zion at the first, with the first pick? Because clearly it's like, no, I'm just stating an actual fact. Like he didn't take him regardless. With Twitter, everything going on with the Patrick Williams injury drive me nuts.
I'm sorry. Is that a thing?
Yes. Oh yeah. Let me enlighten you on what happened. So there was blame associated because when Mitchell Robinson blocked Patrick Williams fell to the ground and hurt his wrist, and now he's out for the season. So Bulls fans,
which sucks, by the way. Let's just say I like Patrick Williams a lot. I liked him before he even entered the league. It's terrible for him, and that's unfortunate. But it has nothing to do with what I have a feeling you're about to tell me is going on.
Yes. Well, again, and you're right. I think seeing any player, period, getting hurt, but especially one who's in his second year, and for a team that is doing well, it's a shame that he's going to be out for the season. But so, Patrick Williams drives the baseline, kind of cocks it back, and then gets blocked, and they call a flagrant 1, and he falls to the ground. The reason that the refs called it a flagrant 1 was because they deemed that there was not unnecessary contact. And this is what the definition is with the NBA official. It's flagrant foul penalty 1, unnecessary contact committed by a player against an opponent. So again, they're saying that this was unnecessary. However, they're not saying it's excessive, which is what the flagrant 2 is for. My problem is that you can kind of clip the Patrick Williams injury how you want. When Mitch starts, based on the camera angle we have, he's very close to blocking the ball, or at least he's making a play at the ball. And then the image being showed is of the fact that it's not, that Mitch's arm is further away. Yeah. And it looks like it's this, offensive thing. And Mitch himself saying, I've been hurt. Why would I want to injure another player? And this idea of looking at that and then overlooking the fact that DeMar DeRozan grabbed onto RJ Barrett's leg, which could seriously hurt him.
That's a dangerous play.
And it's like, exactly. That's the thing. But they deemed it a flagrant 1. They didn't say it was a flagrant 2. So again, if we're kind of looking at those as somewhat equal footing, then that's the thing. It's also seeing, like, when I went on Twitter just now, a moment ago, to find this tweet, the first tweet I saw was from a Knicks fan quote tweeting a Heat fan who was talking about RJ Barrett versus Tyler Hero and comparing it's this whole thing where fans are just going crazy with small sample sizes and in general. And so, I'm sure Knicks fans, we do the same thing, but here's the other thing, right? We have for so many years, our fan base and this team been the proverbial punching bag because of how bad this team has been. And people just can't accept how good the Knicks can be. And it's like, I even saw something where it was like, okay, it's just 5 or 6 games for the Knicks. But then someone said, well, if the Knicks were 0 and whatever, then you'd probably laugh at them. And the person even said yeah, I would have. So look, I'll throw all the non-believers, all the conspiracy theorists, everyone into detention, because I can't throw a Knick into detention when they've just won 3 games in a row and 5 of their first 6. Like, I physically cannot do it, John. It would not be fair. We can criticize and critique. We talked about Randle. But I'm not throwing Randle to detention, not when he's still able to impact the game on defense and on offense when he's just not shooting. And again, would like to see more effort. But maybe is that detention worthy? I think it's maybe more of a demerit.
It's worthy of a talking to.
Right.
It's worthy of a talking to. That's what it is. So sit down. Right. Guide the young man.
Exactly. So yeah, I'm gonna try to flame some of the other people because we deserve it. We deserve to enjoy our moment in the sun, however brief it is. And if it keeps going, then we'll keep going too.
Good detention. I'm literally stunned that people are making something out of a play that, like, I'll be honest, I should it have been called a flagrant? Yeah, probably. Like, in the moment though, like, I didn't think anything of it. He went up for a block, and it's like, that's going to be a flagrant in today's NBA. That's fine. Like, the notion that Mitchell Robinson has a malicious bone in his body is like, obscene to me because he doesn't. Good transition to we'll see if it keeps going because we now get to our predictions segment of the podcast in which Jeremy and I will each make predictions about the week ahead. And we have 4 games on the slate. I have to say, sitting here last week when we re-recorded the pod, the beginning of the pod, after the Magic loss, following you earlier in the day, predicting 3-1 and me predicting 2-2, I was feeling pretty good, my friend. Feeling pretty good. Ordered the steak that night, did I not? But alas, went to you because they won all 3 games, and I'm very happy to be wrong. No one has ever been happier to be wrong about anything than me being wrong about that because they went 3-1. So the week's games ahead, we should say, are Toronto at home on Monday, at Indiana on Wednesday, at Milwaukee, ESPN game on Friday, and then back home to face the Cavaliers of Cleveland. That looks like it is a 6 p.m. start. So Jeremy, to the victor goes the right to be the victor again.
That is true. My heart says 3-1, but my head says 2-2. And again, I think it could easily be 3-1. As we just talked about with these teams in terms of how you can get at them, and what the ceiling of this team could be. I could easily see it being 3-1. And if it is, as I imagine you will scoop that up, then I will congratulate you and we'll be even. But just based on the slate of games, Toronto is a tougher opponent, certainly, than they were last year. And defensively, their net rating, they're actually right behind the Knicks. They're 8th as this moment. They switched quite a bit, a lot of length there. Indiana's down on their luck. They've lost a lot of games, but you never know. Again, if we're talking about playing down to opponents, who knows? You go to Milwaukee, that could be tough. They're the reigning champs. And then you've got Cleveland, who, I mean, on paper seems like an easy win, but Mobley and Allen too, they've been so good defensively that it's just going to be a fun matchup regardless. So I think they win 2 of them. I think the other 2 they drop.
2-2 would not be a disaster by any stretch. It would be fine because if they went 2-2, then they would be, do some quick math here, 7-3 after their first 10 games, and 7-3 would not be a bad outcome. I think I keep circling that the first 16 games is, for whatever reason, that first 16 games is like a sample size I'm going to be looking at. So if they did indeed go 7-3 in the first 10 games, they could go 4-2 over the next 6, and that would get them to 11-5. They were 11-5 after the first 16 games. I think that's pretty darn good. I am obviously going to take 3-1. I very much want them to go into that Milwaukee game riding a 5-game winning streak. That would be really cool because the game's already on ESPN. And the game would then, I think, get a fair bit of attention. We don't know. Drew Holiday's been out. Brook Lopez has been out. DiVincenzo will be out for this game because I don't think he's coming back anytime soon. But the other 2 guys may be back. I would love to see it. So I'll happily take 3-1. I feel very good about it. And we'll see if I get to go first next week. But all in all, I think I do feel really good about where things are at. And it's weird because there's some other things that we could quibble with. Like you mentioned, Manuel Quickley's name. Alec Burks has had some not great moments. The defense we haven't really talked too much about, which it has had its fair share of breakdowns. But by and large, this does seem to be a team with a high ceiling, with a fairly high floor. And they seem to like playing basketball with each other, and they seem to like playing basketball in this city for this coach. And I think, I feel like we'll be able to, not willing to make any proclamations right now, other than like what their ceiling could be. This next week, I feel like is going to tell us a lot. Do you feel the same, or am I by myself on that one?
No, it's certainly indicative of, especially considering the Milwaukee game and depending on what they're able to do. But again, for me, it's kind of like until you get to that 10 to 15 game mark, a lot of it is just randomness. And then it tells a little bit more of a story, which is why I'm trying not to get too into the numbers. I know I've certainly said a few of them today, but it's the sort of thing where they tell a story at a certain point and just don't know how much they add, up until that, or how much they hold up. Like the shooting I buy, right? Like I can tell you that I think the Knicks are going to finish top 3 at worst in shooting 3 points per game, in shooting 3 as a game. Like those are the types of things you can probably analyze, but net ratings, like defensively, maybe how players are finishing, how they're shooting, that is all so varied that it's hard to really dive into it and sink your teeth into it. So, but if we're looking at these 4 games, talking about at least 1 to 2 of those teams that are playing down in that sense, one where you're certainly playing up, but they're maybe depleted. And then one team that is still kind of more middle of the pack in Toronto, where they can surprise you. They can jump out and beat you.
They better take
Toronto
seriously.
Game, but
Yeah, no, they better take Toronto seriously, because Toronto, they defend like crazy. That's gonna be an interesting test, because Chicago kind of dared them to drive the lane more, and it was the first game the Knicks took under 33s all season long. They went back to firing away against the Pelicans. They shot 33 threes, which is still below, where they've been. So I think we see the 3-point frequency coming back down to earth a little bit. It's as far as the league at large, again, before this doesn't factor in Sunday's games, but the Knicks are still 8th in 3-point frequency. This according to Cleaning the Glass. More important is they're first in 3-point accuracy, 41.8%. And that's by a comfortable margin over the second place team, which is Charlotte at 40.2%. And those are the only 2 teams in the league above 40%. I really do feel like the 3-point accuracy is going to be a thing that stays high all year. And it's going to be more a matter of when teams are challenging them to beat them in other ways, can the Knicks figure out how to beat them in other ways? And it would seem that so far so good, because again, the offensive rating is what it is, even though it's early. Are you like particularly worried about one of these games, or you're just like, it sounds like you're a little bit worried about Toronto?
I am, because I feel like if I go to the game, they'll probably lose, and I'm going to the game, so I'm expecting a loss. So that's why
we don't know if Siakam's back yet, right? Is it the word is? I'm assuming because he hasn't played yet this year. So
he hasn't. They recalled him, I know, from the 905 team.
Okay,
it's a sort of thing where it doesn't always feel like players return and face the Knicks. So I'm fully expecting Siakam to get his first reps in there, and that'll be fun.
Well, as of right this second, the latest on him, according to good old ESPN.com, is that he is still out. So we'll see. I don't know what's going to change. I mean, listen, whether he plays or not, they could still lose that game. If he plays, they could certainly still win that game. They should still win the game regardless of whether he plays or not. So, but yeah, no, Toronto has also always seemed to play them tough over the years. I know Lowry's not there anymore. Obviously DeRozan's not there anymore, but yeah, we'll see what happens. All right. I think we did this week justice. Andrew, what do you think?
Do you think you're wrapping up? You haven't done as nearly as many practices or minutes as I need you to do, John.
Oh my God. I was about to do something and I don't want to feed into the bit. I'm going to do it anyway. So on this week's Low Post podcast, Zach Lowe,
Jeremy.
Oh yeah.
When he was interviewing Joakim Noah, you just reminded me of this. Joakim Noah would like stand up to Tibbs and give him shit occasionally. And I wonder who's the player on the Knicks that like stands up to Tibbs now, if anybody. I don't know who that would be.
I have one idea.
Who?
Although I don't know if it would necessarily be right now, but in Mir and Fader's article on
quickly
when he told Calipari, we're not running, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Could be him, but I don't think so. Probably would be Taj, but in a subtle way, maybe.
Yeah, it feels much more of like I don't know if camp counselor is the right way, or like Mr. Feeney, like an old professor that you trust. Everything he says is correct type of way. Like there's no Draymond on this team. They all look at Tibbs as this magician that they look up to.
To me, Taj is that annoying kid at soccer practice who like will just keep like there used to be a kid on my soccer team where it's like, okay, when he gets tired, then we all stop, and then he would just keep running. Yeah. That's Taj for me. Because by the way, shout out Taj Gibson. We haven't mentioned his name once all week. He's been awesome. Had a great game. They probably don't beat the Pelicans without him. So yeah.
The word tired is not in our vocabulary, by the way.
Has he ever said? I don't think that's an actual quote.
Does it sound like a Tibbs quote?
It sounds like a Tibbs quote. It's not an actual Tibbs quote. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that.
There you go.
Well, Tibbs, I'm in love with the shape of you. So
I got
that's
that.
the one song that I knew.
Okay.
That before I was referencing it. I know that song.
Good.
It's a good song.
Yeah.
Anything from you, Andrew, before we get out of here?
None whatsoever. Thank you everybody for tuning in. Happy Halloween. And tune in, if I could just give a shameless plug for my other show, Final Review. We may have a guest on this week's episode that you're all familiar with. So tune in this week as Superhero Week, because Eternals comes out on Thursday. So yeah, tune in. It's gonna be a fun.
That snuck up on me. I forgot that it was coming out.
If you look at their, I don't want to put any expectations on. I'm excited to see to go back into the MCU.
I am familiar with the
reviews have not been. Yeah, the early word is not great, but I'm intrigued. I'm still excited just to go back into that world. So we'll see.
Same here. Jeremy, anything from you before we get out of here?
I don't think so. I think I've said everything I need to say. Get out of here before I do a British accent.
No other song titles?
I'll finish with where I'm at.
That's a title. Yes, I think that's a title.
No, it's not.
Not okay.
It's not.
It sounded like one. If you enjoyed this podcast, don't forget, take an extra second, give us a rating or a review. Please subscribe if you're not already subscribed. And of course, we are in the thick of the season. So you know what that means. Post-game live streams after every Knick game. We start those right away. And if you do happen to miss one, you could always check it out on your podcast feed, which it's up pretty quickly because Andrew is a producer extraordinaire. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Jeremy. And of course, thank you for listening to another episode of the Knicks Film School Podcast. We'll be back with you with more fun and games before you know it.